My name is Sean Jazayeri. I'm responsible for strategic alliances at Current Technology. Neil Kronimus, Senior Director at GDIT. Neil's going to bring it all together by taking us through challenges that are unique to the public sector and how they're meeting those challenges and the solutions they've come up with.
My name is Neil Kronimus. I'm a Senior Director for Cloud Services at GDIT, as well as I chair GDIT's Cloud Center of Excellence. If we go to the next slide, I'd like to start off by talking a little bit about who GDIT is. So the next slide. So we are a 30,000 person organization. We operate worldwide. We have over 50 years of experience in the public sector, and we serve all of the different areas, whether you're in defense, federal civilian, the intelligence community, state and local, national security, health. We have business all across there. If we drill down a little bit further into our cloud practice that we have at GDIT, we have over 3,000 cloud professionals working on over 80 different projects across our scope. We've done this over 10 years. You can see some of the other numbers here. 500 plus applications we've migrated, 200,000 plus email migrations for SaaS, 100 petabytes of data has been migrated. We've been doing this for a long time. We've learned a lot of different things. We've heard a lot of the challenges about moving to the cloud, especially in the public sector, because public sector is what we do. If we go to the next slide, I just want to highlight a few things here around the public sector. And some of these are things we've heard over and over the years. What is the cloud? What can it do for me? What do I need to do to get to the cloud? How do my licensing work? Enterprise licenses are different in the cloud. Do I have to do the re-architecture? You saw Ricardo talk about moving from a monolithic to microservices. There's changes in the cloud by doing that. Is the cloud secure? Security is one of the biggest things we always hear about. What's the cost? People have found that sometimes moving to the cloud costs more than staying on-prem. That's where when you saw before with Shafi and Ricardo talking about doing that discovery and assessing is very key to figure out what are my outcomes. Biggest thing is cloud providers, AWS is rolling out new services constantly and making their service better and better, offering new services. Well, how do I keep up to date with those latest things to make sure my enterprise can utilize and benefit from cloud? These are all these type of challenges. It's very confusing. And that's where GDIT comes in. We're trying to remove the cloud, that whole mixture of obstacles of trying to make it take complex, make it clarify, to make that transformation you're trying to do around your application modernization and make it clear. So you can focus on your business, not focus on the technology behind the scenes. So if we go to the next slide, here's what we've done. We've come up with a solution called Move to Cloud. And it's a framework designed to help you move to the cloud. And it's been evolving over the years. Like I said, we've been doing this for over 10 years with the cloud journey and the cloud transformations. And this framework, and I call it a framework because everybody's different. The agencies are unique. And while they might have some similarities, you have to have a framework that can be modified and tailored to your specific agency. We have a 3-phase approach: discover and assess. If you can't move, you can't analyze what you don't know. So you got to discover it. You got to prioritize what your portfolio in your enterprise look. That includes the applications, the data, everything, security postures, all that has to go into account here. When you have that and you have that prioritization, then you can go into your plan and migrate phase. And that's where you're doing your migration planning, you're doing your test migrations, and then officially doing the migration. But you also don't forget about security, authority to operate, all those things that are important for once you're doing the migration. How are you going to cut things over? Finally, when you do move to get into the cloud, that's when you're in the operate, but you're not done. You still need to optimize because, like I said, new cloud services are coming out all the time. There are ways to make cloud more efficient for you. And that's where you've got to keep continuing looking at the cloud to how can I optimize? How can I cut costs? to make sure I'm utilizing the power of the cloud. If I go to the next slide here, what I want to talk about is the tooling. So that was about the process. So the process is very important here, but you also have to have the right tools. What we did at GDIT is we actually did some analysis. We looked at our past cloud migrations over the years, and we looked at what process was used. We looked at what tools were used. We looked at the people that were involved. What kind of skill sets did they have? But we also looked at 3 years worth of public sector RFIs and RFPs that we could get our hands on. And we decided, look, what are those requirements? And what we found is it followed the 80-20 rule. 80% of the requirements for migrations were technically the same about how to get to the cloud, their security concerns, infrastructure concerns, all that type of stuff. The other 20% were unique to that agency. So what we decided to do is we categorized those. We took those 80%, we took that 20%, and we categorized them. We built use cases. Next, what we did was we looked at the landscape out there of all the different migration tools, whether it was a COTS tool, a cloud service provider tool like Ricardo showed you from AWS, open source migration tools that are out there, and we did an analysis, just paper at first, just against those categories, those use cases that we looked at. From there, we narrowed it down to a top 10. From these top 10, we contacted all the vendors. We brought them into our lab and ran actual use cases with the software installed, doing migrations to figure out what are the best tools out there. And then we narrowed that down. And that's where you see Corent SurePass rose to the top. And because they were doing some unique things, you heard Shafi say about them. A couple of things he didn't talk about that was important is the business case side of the house. Because not only do you have to understand the technology side, you have to understand, is it make business sense? Corent provides a cloud business analysis that helps me determine how much it's going to cost to migrate to the cloud. How much is going to cost me to operate in the cloud? What is my total cost or ownership or TCO going to be in the cloud for the next 3 years? That's something that the tool does that was really nice, that no other tool we saw had all that integrated, that did the discovery, assessment, my business case, and also helped me do the migrations. So, like I said, choosing the right tool is very important here. So if we go on to the next slide, what I like to do is just kind of summarize some things here. And when you're doing your modernization, you're doing your cloud journey, keep these things in mind. First thing, education, communication, training. Not everybody knows everything about cloud. And so you have to make sure you understand what cloud can do for you, what cloud can't do for you. You have to communicate to the entire agency. We're going to the cloud. Here's the benefits. Here's why. You have to train. Remember, when you're moving to the cloud, multiple people are affected here in your IT organization. You make sure they get the proper training. Interfaces will change. So get the proper training there. When you're doing the assessment, focus on the business outcomes. Remember, it's also about the end user experience. So those applications are providing support to your agency's mission. That's the most critical thing. Make sure the end user, the customer experience doesn't change. It improves. It gets better. That's what you're trying to do here. Because cost savings is important, but it's also about making sure that mission is protected. Also, establish a partnership. Go with someone you trust, someone that you've worked with before, someone that has that experience utilizing the clouds, utilizing migrations, and make sure you have a partnership with them so you're working hand in hand. Don't do it where someone just comes in, does it all for you, and then you're like, well, what happened? Make sure you have that relationship, that trusted partnership with someone. Remember, it's more than just technology. You're not just migrating an application from your data center to the cloud. You're changing the way you're doing business. So organizational change management is key here, making sure everybody understands what happens. Some of your policies and procedures that are in place might have to change. A good example here is security. What happens when an incident happens? Your old policy might be, hey, I go down the data center and seize that server. Well, guess what? In the cloud, you can't do that. So how is that policy going to change? So all those type of intangibles you have to think about. Collaboration, communication, making sure you're communicating, collaborating across the agency, making sure everybody knows what's going on. You don't want a group at the last minute to come in to throw in a red flag or something that halts your journey to the cloud. So make sure you're collaborating from the get-go. All the key stakeholders are involved. The other thing is, what happens after I migrate? Because remember, it's more than just technology. Did you inform the help desk that things have changed? How is the help desk going to change the way they're going to do things from after the migration? How is the security team, going to do their security scans? How is the infrastructure team? All those type of things after the migration. So make sure you take into account before you move the first thing to the cloud. Also, authority to operate. Remember, you have an ATO on your current applications today sitting inside your data center. When you move it over to the cloud, you still have to redo that ATO. Now, yes, clouds have FedRAMP, and you're allowed to inherit some of their controls to help with the ATO process, but it's not complete. It doesn't include your application on top of that. So you have to factor that into your planning. And if your agency is looking to go to more than one cloud and use multiple clouds, then you have to realize things will change. It's not as simple, it's not cookie cutter. Each cloud service provider does things differently, so you have to do things a little different, and you have to require more planning. These are some ideas. They're not all the lessons learned, but these are some good ones to get started with and keep in mind as you're modernizing and moving to the cloud. My last takeaway here is, remember, the process is key here, but you also have to have the right tool, the right people to be successful.